One of the most famous passages in the New Testament is found in Acts 17, where Paul gives a passionate speech before the people of Athens. The story goes that he sits down with the Epicurean and Stoic philosophers and starts talking about the resurrection. And they're like, who is this guy? What is this resurrection? So they take him before the Areopagus, which also means the hill of Ares, or also romanized as Mars Hill. Now, I happen to be standing on the Areopagus right now. The Areopagus is a rocky outcropping sticking up out of the Acropolis of Athens, which is home to the much more famous Parthenon. Now, the story in Acts 17 resonates deeply with this place. Not only is the speech of Paul emblazoned on the front of the Areopagus, but tourists come here all the time as a sort of pilgrimage, reading Acts 17 as they look down over Athens, or even giving short sermons before the rock itself. But despite how famous this passage is, its historical context is actually pretty convoluted, even though it's entirely likely that Paul could have given a speech like this in Athens. Because Paul never mentions this in his letters, and the highly stylized rhetoric of the speech, many scholars see this more as evidence of the author of Acts' views on Paul as an early hero of Christianity, more than what it tells us about Paul's possible journey to Athens itself. So the story in Acts 17 is actually very vague. We don't know what the author of Acts was actually trying to say. You see, the Areopagus was not only a place, but it was also a legislative and administrative council. Back in the heyday of the Athenian democracy, it was kind of a decree-busting council that could keep other governing bodies in check if they started going corrupt. But as time went on, rulers started taking powers away from the Areopagus Council. By the time Paul would have been alive, the Areopagus Council was really just a homicide court that took care of other small civic duties like arson or religious offenses. In the Roman period, the Areopagus Council was housed in the Royal Stoa, which was an administrative building on the northwest corner of the Athenian Agora here in front of me, which was a public forum used for religious, government, and commercial reasons. So the text says that Paul stands in the middle of the Areopagus. So does that mean he stands in the midst of this rock, or does he stand in the midst of an administrative council in the Royal Stoa? Some ancient authors do seem to indicate that the Areopagus was in charge of vetting new religions being introduced to Athens. So if this is the case, the author of Acts might be trying to present a more hostile picture of Paul giving a defense of his religion in front of an administrative council. In fact, some scholars say that the original audience of Acts would have immediately seen the change of venue to the Areopagus as a change to a hostile environment. And not only this, it evokes a popular motif of Greek apologies, most famously Socrates' defense in front of another ruling council of Athens. This connection is even stronger if you notice that Socrates and Paul both referred to their audience as the men of Athens before launching into their speech. Not only this, Paul relies on several famous Greek rhetorical strategies in his speech. Like, for example, when Paul refers to the Athenians as very superstitious or very religious, he's using a very Socratic strategy to turn the tables on the Athenians. You Athenians are the superstitious ones, not us Christians. Also, he curiously never mentions Jesus by name or by title, which is another Socratic strategy to introduce an argument subtly instead of bold and in your face. Now, we really don't know if this is what the author of Acts had in mind. He might have wanted to evoke a more friendly conversation on the Areopagus, but nevertheless, this is an example of how the historical context can reveal a lot in an ancient text. Sometimes living in the 21st century, we just miss so much of the subtleties of these stories that the original audience would have picked up immediately. As always, thanks for watching and please subscribe.